So, here's a big question for you. Can you actually learn how to be generous? I mean, is doing good a skill, something you can practice and get better at? We're going to dig into that because if the answer is yes, well, that could change a lot of things. All right, to really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a simple analogy, something I think we can all get behind: cooking. I mean, think about it, right? You can't become a master chef just by reading a bunch of cookbooks. You've got to get in the kitchen, you have to get your hands dirty, experiment, probably burn a few meals along the way. So, why would we ever think that being good at giving, at actually making a difference, would be any different? This idea kind of flips the whole concept of generosity on its head. What if it's not just some innate trait you're born with, but something you actually do? You know, a skill you can build up over time? A skill that takes knowledge, some critical thinking, and a whole lot of practice. But that begs the question, how in the world do you build a gym for generosity? Well, it turns out someone has already figured out a way to do just that. They've designed a way to take philanthropy out of the dusty old textbooks and put it right into the real world. Let's take a look at how it all works. Okay, so the method has a name: experiential philanthropy. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a super hands-on class where students aren't just reading about giving, they're actually doing it. Here's the kicker. They get a real pot of money, usually from a foundation, and their whole job is to figure out which local nonprofits get that cash. So picture this in a classroom. The students don't just, read about nonprofits. They basically become investigative journalists. They team up, they dig deep into the missions, the finances, the real-world impact of different local organizations. Then comes the really high-stakes part. Each team has to stand up and pitch their chosen nonprofit to the rest of the class. And in the end, everybody votes, and a real, actual check gets written to the winning organization. We're talking real money with real-world consequences. Okay, so that sounds fantastic in theory, right? But the big question is, does it actually work? Does it really change people? To find out, some researchers put this teaching method, which started in the US, by the way, to the ultimate test. They took it to a completely different cultural setting. Yep, a 2020 study led by a researcher named Li did exactly that at a university over in China. They surveyed a bunch of students taking an Intro to Nonprofit Management course. They surveyed them before the class started and then again after it was all over to see if this hands-on experience actually changed anything. And what they found was pretty striking. So before the course, these students didn't really have a high awareness of the nonprofit world or the social issues they were trying to tackle. But after they went through the class, after they actually awarded real funds to a real organization, that whole picture changed dramatically. And I mean, the numbers really speak for themselves here. Just look at this jump in awareness. On a 100-point scale, it shot up from about 61 all the way to nearly 77. That was the single biggest change the researchers found. It's almost like a light switch got flipped on, suddenly showing them a whole part of their community they'd never really noticed. And this wasn't just some abstract, oh, that's interesting kind of awareness. No, it translated directly into future action. The students reported a much higher intention to donate their own money down the road. It seems like the act of giving once made them want to keep on giving. The numbers tell one part of the story, for sure, but hearing from the students themselves really brings it home. Listen to this quote from one of them. It shows that the change wasn't just about money. It was about this new spark, this desire to get personally involved and find a new sense of purpose. Okay, so the evidence seems pretty clear. This thing works. But that just leads to an even bigger question, doesn't it? Why? What is going on inside these students' heads that turns one single class project into what could be a lifelong commitment to giving? To really understand that, to see the profound impact of this whole experience, we need to dive into the psychology of what's happening. And the answer, it seems, lies in this really powerful idea called pro-social identity. Think about it like this. All of our identities are made up of different roles, right? You might see yourself as a parent, a friend, maybe an artist. A pro-social identity is when helper or volunteer or giver becomes a fundamental part of how you see yourself. And this class is basically the perfect machine for building that identity. It creates this powerful feedback loop. First, the students are told to act like philanthropists. Then, while they're debating and making their case, they're getting constant feedback from their classmates. This whole process just reinforces what they're doing, and it starts to strengthen this new identity as a giver. And once you truly start to see yourself that way, well, giving in the future just becomes a natural expression of who you are. So if this model is this effective on an individual level, what happens when we zoom out and look at the bigger picture? What are the broader implications of teaching giving in this very hands-on way? When you really step back and look at it, it's this incredible cycle that benefits literally everyone involved. The students don't just learn something new, they're transformed. The nonprofits, they get much-needed funding without having to jump through all the usual hoops. The foundations get to see their money make a direct, immediate impact, and the universities build these strong, tangible connections with their local communities. It really is a win-win-win-win. And all of this brings us to one last really big question. We've just seen how generosity, this incredibly important human quality, isn't just something you're born with. It can be taught, it can be practiced. So it really makes you wonder, right? What other crucial social skills are we just kind of leaving up to chance? If we can teach people how to be better givers, what's stopping us from systematically teaching things like empathy or collaboration, or even just what it means to be an engaged citizen?